What happens when someone's sole purpose of living becomes work, living life just to work? In the Surreal story, we observe how the protagonist of the game finds himself in a never-ending cycle of living to work and to simply survive, which becomes a severe punishment for him. The protagonist awakens in a simple room, having only white and black color tones, depicting how life in his perspective is seen as such a bland, uninteresting depiction, implying the way that he feels. Interacting with the bed in an unenthusiastic manner, he refers to it as the bed, an item that he just sleeps on, being devoid of any characterization both in the way it looks and the way the protagonist refers to it. From now on, I will refer to the protagonist as John Doe, as the way he carries himself and the way he lives seems very bland and impersonal, making him be just another person and definitely not the main character. John knows exactly what he needs to do. Today is Monday, and as a reminder, he picks up the sheet labeled as tasks, which has a list of to-dos summarizing his day for him. This simple sheet of paper has a yet simpler list, displaying how John has only 5 tasks for the day. Nothing more and nothing less. The very first thing he needs to do is work, being the pillar of his life and existence. Next is to eat, as that's how he can survive and fuel himself just so that he can work again, like a tiny little cogwheel in a more complex and intricate world. Subsequently, he needs to collect his money, which he earned from work, so he can pay for food, bills, and tax, and eventually he needs to sleep to recover from the weight of exhaustion and work, just to be prepared for another day of work to repeat everything from the top. On his way to work, John notices a blank picture hung on the wall, completely pitch black, which portrays the void, the life that he's leading on with no ambition or goal, living just to earn enough to pay for his daily expenditure, bills, and food, just so he can survive to work. This image is something that speaks to John, portraying his life and how he feels, hence being his favorite photograph. As he opens the door to his workplace, which strangely is located meters away from other rooms which he needs to sleep in and eat in, he observes how the computer on the desk that he needs to work on follows his direction, being something that is gravitated towards him. Left with no other choice and nothing else to live for, he gets on the computer, being provided with only 2 buttons: yes and no. The very first 2 questions popping on the screen prompt John to press the buttons in order. If John decides to do otherwise and not follow the very direct instructions of the boss man, he gets punished by insults and earful complaints, despite the instructions not making much sense and being completely pointless. The questions following make John question his own existence and if he is trapped in an unreal world, stuck to suffer, as they ask him if water is wet, and very simple mathematical problems which seem to be more of a test than actual work. Nonetheless, John is left with no other choice but to answer correctly, and most importantly, what the computer wants to hear, even if the answers are not correct. One question in specific makes John go deep in thoughts, a simple question asking him if he is happy. Knowing he is not happy, feeling as if he is losing his mind, he knows deep down that the workplace doesn't really care about how he feels, and the right answer for them would not be to answer truthfully, but to paint a picture that they want to see, to show himself as someone happy in the workplace, and that's exactly what he does, answering yes to being happy, even though he isn't. After what feels like a long time, he finishes work and is urged to eat, as it is on his list of things to do, as he also feels hungry and needs to refuel to continue on. Eating canned food being stored in the fridge next to other canned food, simply being something to keep John running. Nothing fancy to make his repetitive life any more exciting. He goes on to collect his pay after feeling full from this bland canned food. As he collects his pay, he needs to subsequently go to the payment desk where he needs to pay his entire earnings for bills, food, and a place to sleep in. It seems as if his entire life is narrowed down into the small little place containing all of his life and routine. Essentially, John is working tirelessly to earn enough to spend it all on someone observing him so that he can live, making him work to live, quite literally. As he tries to pay, the entire complex becomes red and shaky, as if displaying the place is getting angry with him because of not being super fast in paying off his earnings to the overseer. The entity that takes payments, on the other hand, seems to be a giant mouth, which consumes the earnings, eating away at John and his existence, taking away his hard-earned money, forcing him to work an endless pointless job, as if depicting that the entity is living off workers' energy and work. As John is done with his tasks, the last one is to go to bed, which he does, awakening after what feels like seconds in an identical bland colorless room where he is tasked to complete the same exact chores in order. After answering some more pointless questions at the workroom, he gets questioned if he gets enough sleep, which is a shallow, pretentious question, as John is fully aware the entity doesn't want to know the truth. He just wants to pretend that he cares, forcing John to lie, being happy and getting enough rest, as if being another way of tormenting him, making him lose his sanity and character, lying to himself. Or maybe a test pushing his buttons to the point that he breaks and actually has enough to say the truth. This time around, there are more images of the void, further displaying his pointless existence. John, left with no choice, goes on to eat another canned food and collect his pay, which this time around extends the hall to the place to pay, tormenting John more and how overbearing it truly is. As he manages to feed the demonic-looking entity with money, he goes back to bed just to wake up seconds later in the same room, which has now changed slightly. Being Wednesday now, he finds an ankh in the place of his bed, with his bed having been displaced, glued on the side wall. Confused by this unreal scene, John is flabbergasted, not knowing what to think. The ankh, of course, is an ancient Egyptian item symbolizing life and afterlife itself. So essentially, this portrays how John might be having some sort of illustration of how he lived his life and how he is reliving it in the afterlife, suffering for the mistakes that he made and the life he didn't pursue, wasting his potential. The paper of the to-do list has now deformed, with the words pay and work being etched on the paper with larger and more prominent letters, implying how these are the highlights of John's life and what his purpose truly is, to work his rare end off and just to pay. The hall outside connecting the rooms now have all been reshaped, with the workroom being upside down now. The questions on the computer are more redundant as well, at times not even being articulated well, with the highlighted question being if John has accomplished everything in his life that he wanted, presenting him with two simple options to answer, yes or no. It seems as if John is being reminded of his past life and a reminder of what he could be or what he could achieve. But for whatever reason, he didn't, and instead worked a dead-end job, wasting his life, something that he is being punished for now. After the place being completely misshaped, John manages to find his way through a maze, collect his pay, and feed an ever-hungry mouth, with no food even being found in the fridge this time, depicting how he lived only to work and pay. Sleeping off the day, with the day being Thursday now, the place has now turned into a long maze, which depicts how John's life was a meaningless maze where he lost himself and only lived to work, not realizing his potential. This time around, the computer simply asks him if anything matters, to which John knows the answer to, but of course doesn't say it. Instead of finding food in the fridge, John finds money, and instead of finding money in the payment desk, he finds an arm, which displays how they are interchangeable. Money is simply food and food is money. He earns to buy money and he eats to survive in order to work and make money. And also the payment desk showing an arm displays how he is giving an arm or his body and health in order to earn money. And eventually the giant mouth eats the arm, displaying how in fact it is work which has been slowly consuming John, taking away his life from him. This is followed by John finding a corpse on his bed, which is subsequently followed by a coffin taking him in, displaying how he wasted his life working endlessly. Friday soon arrives, with John saying how he is almost done, with it being the last day of the week. The to-do list this time is only filled with the word work, on how he is consumed by work and nothing else matters. The first workroom asks him question on if he needs more shifts and work, to which he is forced to answer yes. The second computer poses more commands than questions, saying how he needs to fully commit himself to work and forget about his life and anything else, to which he has one option only: to agree. That's when John asks himself to what he's doing, going to the next workroom where the computer asks him if he is happy, something that it asked him on the very first day. At first, answering yes, the computer asks if he is lying, to which he builds up his courage and answers truthfully, saying how he is actually unhappy, which strangely the computer accepts this time, as if having been an intricate test for John to overcome his routine, where he was unhappy, willing to move on to a different life and finally explore his potential and break free. It seems as if this room or this stage was trying to push John to the edge so he can finally build up the courage and decide to change it. At least if that's something he didn't do in his past life, he can do now. As John leaves work, he takes his money and enters a maze of doors where he is confronted with a path decorated with eyes and a large mouth. Entering the mouth, he faces the representation of doom and misery, the giant mouth, a job he tirelessly committed himself to and died working, where he finally has enough and builds the courage to leave. Entering the trap that he put himself in, or his past life, the place where he slept in, worked, ate, collected his money and paid his bills. A very small life that he put himself in. He has a sledgehammer now, which he uses to destroy this representation of life that he had before. Destroying this place shows how he has been trapped in an empty space covered with a black maze, being completely empty and pointless, which he continues to destroy, reaching a computer which he proceeds to destroy as well, ending his confinement and constant reason for misery. This seems to free John from a prison that he created for himself, peacefully moving on to afterlife, finally overcoming his fear of letting go and pursuing what makes him truly happy. Being free, essentially passing a test to be worthy of a good afterlife. Despite what this game portrays and the clear message that it's trying to convey, unfortunately life is repetitive, and no matter how much fun we want to have, they will all become repetitive too at some point. So it's important to understand the value of a healthy work-to-life ratio and a steady job where one can sustain themselves, as otherwise, what is a life without sustainability? With not knowing what will happen tomorrow, not having the assurance of a stable, safe life. And on top of that, many people in different parts of the world don't even have the luxury of working a 9-to-5 job 5 times a week, and they have to work 12-hour shifts, at minimum sometimes 6 or even 7 times a week. That is the dark truth of life. It's not easy. But at the same time, one shouldn't be afraid of taking chances and pursuing something that makes them truly happy with the chance of becoming more successful. Anyway, life is not easy and it's really complicated, and there's no easy answer to it at all. What are your thoughts about this whole topic? Let me know down in the comment section below. As always, it's been your host Star, and I will see you on the next one. Have a fantastic day.